Once you get your clock put back together, you're going to want to put it on a test stand. And I have this test stand myself. And you're going to want to run it for at least 24 hours. Because it's a one-day clock, within those 24 hours, you're going to figure out whether it's going to stay running or not. And again, this is the reason why I use the wire versus putting the links back onto the chain. Because if I have to take this thing all apart, I have to undo the chain links to take the clips off that hold the weights. I use the wire. That way I just untwist it or I cut it and take it off that way. And you also want to make sure the clock is level, both left to right and front to back. Because if it's not level, you're going to do adjustments on the pendulum leader and crutch assembly in order to get it to where it's cuckooing correctly. And if it's not level, you're going to do unnecessary adjustments. When you hang your clock back on the wall, you're going to have to put it unlevel in order for it to run correctly. So make sure your clock is level. If you don't have a test stand, you could set your clock up between two chairs. And I have two different size chairs here, so that's why it's tilted. But if you don't have a test stand like I do, you could set your clock up in between the two chairs and use that to test out your clock. But you want to run your clock, like I said, for at least a day to make sure that it is all functioning properly. I don't want to put it all back together until it's running properly. I don't have the strike side weights on, but you want to do that also and put the hands on. That way it's all being tested for at least a day. And in that time frame, you're going to find out whether the clock is working properly or not. And like I said, you will have to adjust this wire right here. And again, this wire stops the fan from rotating when it's on the hour. Because if it's on the hour and it's not positioned properly, what happens is the music will start and the bird will cuckoo at the same time. And that's not the way the clock is supposed to work. The cuckoo is supposed to cuckoo and do its thing. And when it shuts, that's when the music starts. When it shuts, the hour, the wire here will go to the left of the fan to allow the fan to spin, and that's when the man and everything will come out and the music will do its thing. Now, I took the pendulum off so I could show you on a one-day clock, it's easy to get the thing adjusted. And you know you got to adjust it right. When you stop the wire and you let go of it, it continues to run. Another thing you might want to do is take the pendulum off while you're doing its test. And that way it runs faster, and it will allow you to find out if you have any problems faster than waiting 24 hours. Another thing that you want to look at is this lever right here. It should be nice and tight. And if it's not tight, you take a hammer and strike this nail, and it'll tighten it up. Now I'm going to be showing you some other things on different clocks because I don't have all the parts for my sister's clock. I didn't want to take the topper and everything else with me. This isn't even the right pendulum. I left her pendulum at the house, and I didn't want to take all that other stuff with me because you don't need all that. I got extra pendulums and what have you. Also want to mention my stand itself. And if I show you something in my house, you might think I'm a slob. But I'm single. I work on my stuff when I want to work on my stuff, when I feel like working on my stuff. And I don't have to answer to nobody but myself. But I made this stand, and I got it attached to my breakfast bar here. And that way I can work on my clocks. A lot of these stands will hang from the ceiling. If you have a garage, I would suggest that to make them hang from the ceiling. If you could attach it to the rafters in your garage or the beams in your garage, that way you can look at the front of the clock and the rear of the clock at the same time. If I want to look at the front of the clock on this clock, I have to take it out, turn it around. That way I can look at the front of the clock. And that's just because of my setup. But I did not want to nail boards into my ceilings. And so this is why I have it mounted the way I do. Now you could purchase these through eBay, Time Savers, other places. But again, I made my own, and it works for me. I want to mention a few things about clocks. This is an older clock that I have, and I purchased. Yes, it needs some woodworking done to it. I'm not a professional woodworker. But the older clocks, I'm going to zoom in for you. If you look, I was telling you before that the dials are secured by putting a nail in at number 6, number 10, and number 2. In this particular clock, they got nails in every one of the numbers. I'm not for sure exactly how these dials are attached. I haven't taken this one out, but the older clocks got nails in every one of the numbers. So that's another way that you can tell whether you got an older clock or not. And these are some of my clocks that I have up and running. Now, of course, not all of them are running. There's an 8-day clock right here that I have to work on. It needs bushings, and I told you at the beginning that I am not a professional, and I'm not for sure exactly how to put in bushings yet, but that is something that I will self-teach myself. But I got an owl cuckoo clock here. Again, I got the wires attached because I'm still working on this clock, but you can see the eyes moving back and forth. That's the way it's supposed to do. Going around my house. I have a few clocks. I'm just not collecting of cuckoo clocks, but I have several other clocks. Here's a 30-hour clock that was made by Benjamin Gray of Loughborough, England, that I purchased while I was over in England. And I'm still working on that. It was made around 1850. It had the original glass in it with the bubbles and everything. And when they packaged everything up, when I left England, they built a box for this clock, a crate, but they did a bad job for the glass, because out of all my clocks that I collected over in England, this was the only clock that got damaged. And the only thing that got damaged was the glass itself. It broke. And there are places that make glass from that time frame using the same way they did make it, but the glass is pretty expensive, and I am on a limited budget. One of my favorite cuckoo clocks, and I have a few Seiko activated motion clocks that I like. This one just dial spins and music is played. Now, my daughter, who's currently living with me, she bought a few clocks also, and she didn't get with me before she bought this clock. And whenever the hour struck, the music would play and it wouldn't shut off. It had a loose wire in it, and I had to solder that back up. And when it comes to battery operated clocks, I don't know a lot about them, and sometimes I get lucky. This is another Seiko motion activated clock. And when you press it, the dial rotates and the music plays. And I'm really fond of it. And I had several anniversary clocks around my house. Now I got one up there, I believe it's this one, that was made in 1908 by Gustav Becker. Now, a lot of people would disagree with me, saying that a clock from that time frame would have a disc pendulum, but my 400-day clock repair guide shows it could be either a disc pendulum or a ball pendulum like mine does. Here's another one of my anniversary clocks. I have so many clocks that I'm working on, but I am very fond of this one. It's very beautiful. I purchased this past year. I paid quite a bit of money for it, but I love it. I haven't never seen an anniversary clock like this one, and so that's why I was willing to spend the money for it. Yeah, we're in my bedroom, and I got a few more clocks to show you. I'm very fond of this clock here. It's an 8-day clock. I love this clock right here. It's a Popo clock, but it has a calendar with it. The calendar doesn't work the best, but it does work. I think it could been made better. It's a clock that I'm working on that has wooden plates. I've had people that want to buy this clock off of me. This is called a Soar clock. I'm not for sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it came with this porcelain plate and porcelain dial that fits on there. And there are little wire hooks on the top that go into the wood. Now, the wire hooks fit into holes in this wood, and with this thing being that old, I'm not comfortable with the way it was designed. So I'm going to redesign it a little bit and add thicker wood to this and add eyelets That way I know that this porcelain dial, which is extremely rare, the NAWCC has a section talking about these Sawyer clocks. These clocks are extremely rare, and most of the time they have wooden plates that are painted. This particular clock has got a porcelain plate and a porcelain dial, and this is the first clock that I had that had wooden plates, and with the help of one of my Facebook friends who lives over in Australia, he guided me on some of the things on how to take this clock apart. But I took it all apart, got it all cleaned up, shined up the brass. I don't have the correct pendulum leader, but as you can see, it is sitting there ticking away. This is another clock that I purchased recently. The reason I purchased this clock because I was wanting to take it apart before I took the other clock that I showed you apart, and because I was weary about taking it apart, but I purchased it to take it apart, and it's made a little bit different from the other clock I showed you. And so I went ahead and took the other clock apart and cleaned it, and I'm very proud of myself. But this clock is it's not a Sawyer clock, but it's what was called a wag on the wall clock, I believe. But the clock was made around between 1850 and 1900 also. But I got to clean that up. Here's an older clock that I have. Again, it's got the wooden cuckoo. The wings are not movable on this one, so it's not as old as the other one I showed you previously, but there are the nails around the dial. Again, I live by myself. Well, my daughter lives with me, and I work. I got clocks spread all over the place. I'm working on several clocks. Because of the medicine I take, it gets me distracted. So I might start working on one clock and stop, and then I'll start working on another clock. And I have clock parts all over the place. Get back to my sister's clock. Once you've tested this thing and you're completely satisfied with it, go ahead and put the proper links onto the chains, both the clip and the washer. The washer prevents the chain from going up in the movement. Into the holes, and these clips right here is what hangs the weights. Now, depending on the weight is depending on the clip. But once you got it all tested and you're completely satisfied, then you want to put the bellows back in the reverse order as you took them out. Remember, I put the rubber bands on them, and I would suggest starting with the nail hole, shove the bellow onto the nail, and then lining it up, and then starting your screw. You want to make sure the bellow is over the hole, starting your screw, and then you will find where the hole is on the bellow as you're tightening the screw. And then you want to test it again after you got the bellows on it. I would suggest testing it for at least a couple of hours. to make sure everything is working properly. Now I want to talk about the toppers. You hear my clock's going off. I want to talk about the toppers. Some of the toppers have got this design right here in where there's a screw, and these screws fit into these slots on the clock. Now, a lot of times these are loose, so you'll have to take a hammer and tighten these up. But these toppers only go on one way. You start one end, and then you get them to go into the other end. Again, I have trouble doing this stuff on camera because it normally takes two hands to do stuff. But I'm holding the camera and videoing and trying to do this instructional video at the same time. Here's a novelty clock. Now these novelty clocks you have to wind up all the time with a small novelty key, and they have a wire coming down just like this owl clock has a movement end that this pendulum attaches to. Now in this particular novelty clock, it would take a smaller pendulum, but it's the same design. It's got a wire coming down from it, and you would attach the pendulum on that, but it could only be about a 3-inch pendulum in order for this to function properly. Now here's a cuckoo quail clock that I purchased off a marketplace, and believe it or not, I only paid $40 for the clock. Yes, the clock needs repaired, but this clock is a clock that was distributed in America, in Chicago. And if you look really close at the dial, it'll say on here, Cool Clock Company, Chicago, made in Germany. You could tell that the clock was made in 1908. From the research that I did, they identified their clocks in 1908 by having Cool Clock Company, Chicago, Illinois, made in Germany. But in 1909, they changed that to where it's KKC, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But again, you got the nails going through every number. And here's the movement itself. And it's got the GK, which is for the cool, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a cuckoo quail clock. But it's something that I'm working on. Of course, I got a mess in my house. I have a well, and the pump went bad, so I've been working on that for the last few days, trying to get that fixed. But and working on cuckoo clocks and doing everything else that I do, helping out my neighbors. And so my house is a mess. I haven't been able to wash clothes. I haven't gone to the laundromat. So anyway, I hope y'all have liked the videos that I am posting. Please comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm doing anything wrong. Again, I do this for myself. I have fixed clocks for friends, but mainly I do this for myself because, as you could see, I collect a lot of clocks. And this is what started me collecting clocks. when I was stationed over in England, you guys saw something that you weren't supposed to see. A neighbor gave that to me. And it's a collection, and he was trying to find out how much it was worth. So I was researching it for him. But this is a gramophone that I purchased over in England while I was in the military, along with 2 clocks. And that is one of the clocks that I purchased, but I got the antique bug after that. And this particular gramophone has the record side, and then this side has got the horn on it. And this is where they get the old saying, put a sock in it. The gramophones do not have a volume control on them. You can close the door to muffle the sounds a little bit, but as you can see, the horn goes back quite a ways. In order to muffle the sound, they would put a sock into the horn, and that quietened the gramophone down. So when somebody tells you put a sock in it, this is where they're getting it from the gramophones, to just telling you to quieten it down a little bit. But anyway, I hope y'all liked the videos that I presented. I'm sorry there's so many of them. They're just different things that I was doing in the process. Working on my water, helping out neighbors. I got a father who has Alzheimer's. Anyway, I hope y'all like the videos. Please let me know by commenting. Please let me know what you think. Please let me know what I can improve on. And please let me know whether you want me to post more videos. But take care. God bless. And I'm trying to get Facebook to load up the first video now. And that was 22 minutes. This particular video is 27 minutes. And Facebook has taken almost an hour to load the first video. So it's going to take a while for me to load all these videos. But let me know what you think. Thanks, and God bless.